So, Act 2, Scene 2. Another of the key questions surrounding this play is whether or not we feel sorry for Macbeth. He is a noble and well-respected man, brave, loyal, courageous in battle. He is ambitious, but through the actions of an evil woman, or women if you consider the witches, he pushes that ambition too far. Ultimately, he sees the error of his ways and falls from his position, and considering that, is it possible to feel sympathy for him? On the other hand, however, he's a brutal killer who decapitates people at the behest of the king. He schemes and plots with his wife and the witches to murder a good and noble man. He goes against all decency and moral principle by killing his king, his relative, and a guest in his own home. He also kills many more people indiscriminately in order to keep his ill-gotten gains, and in this light, is it much more difficult to feel sorry for him, I wonder? Well, Act 2, Scene 2 is one of the keys to unlocking this debate. The fact that the murder of Duncan occurs off stage is very significant, because it would be difficult, if not impossible, for the audience to have a shred of sympathy for Macbeth if they were to witness the actual act. The first we actually see of Macbeth following the deed is when he returns holding the bloody daggers and says, "I have done the deed," while Lady Macbeth, seeing he's brought the murder weapons with him, says, "Why did you bring the daggers from this place? They must lie there." Macbeth is full of fear, almost hysterically so, as well as remorse and sadness for what he has done. And the fact that we see the state of Macbeth after the murder rather than the deed itself is important to how we feel towards him as a character. We also feel an amount of sympathy for Lady Macbeth when she admits she had tried to murder Duncan herself, but he, quote, "resembled my father as he slept." So she couldn't bring herself to do it. This is the only human emotion we see in Lady Macbeth in the entire play. The confidence and mastery of language and argument displayed by both characters is completely absent in this scene. Both of them are on edge, and Lady Macbeth in particular is troubled by a number of things. She jumps at the sound of all things, an owl, probably the least scary thing. "Hark, peace," she shouts, while Macbeth behaves as if he's in a trance. He appears not to care whether he is caught or not, and indulges in self-reproach while Lady Macbeth desperately tries to bring him round. One of the most famous ironies of the play is introduced here. Lady Macbeth urges her husband to wash the blood from his hands, telling him, "A little water clears up us of this deed." This is an extended metaphor we see in the rest of the play in many ways, where the images of blood and water are used to show the murderous deeds which are impossible to wash away. Lady Macbeth herself returns to this image when she is close to insane. There is a real contrast between both characters in this scene. While both are on edge and appear painfully human, it's Lady Macbeth's practical side which is called into operation. Macbeth's remorse at the killing has left him in a state where he could easily be detected. He's brought the daggers with him from the room, a metaphor perhaps of his guilt, which requires Lady Macbeth to return them, thus exposing her to the crime, and a vision that later in the play haunts her dreams. The knocking at the gate is symbolic in a number of ways. The audience, as well as the characters, have been in this grim, ghoulish, dark environment for a number of scenes. We've been exposed to Macbeth's fevered ramblings and Lady Macbeth's cold calculations. The knocking symbolises the reality outside of the castle gates. There's a world out there not immediately poisoned by these deeds. It's also a symbol, extended in the following scene, of the knocking at the gates of hell. In Act 1, when Lady Macbeth dedicates herself to evil and in effect is possessed by demons, her castle becomes a type of hell. She leads Duncan by the hand into his hell, and he never emerges. The stars over the castle don't shine, and as we will see in later scenes, the murder of Duncan disrupts the balance in nature. The knocking wakes Macbeth and Lady Macbeth from the dark and murderous revelry in which they've held the audience, and it suddenly makes the deed they've committed shocking, raw, and real.